Welcome to Getting Personal, a monthly podcast diving deep into the stories of the heartbeat of HR. Brought to you by Compt, a global lifestyle benefits platform where companies empower employees with benefits and rewards they'll use and appreciate, whoever and wherever they are in life.
So today is a very exciting episode because for the first time ever, I have two guests. It's going to be perfect, though. This format is very exciting because these two wonderful women are working on something very cool. Welcome, Maggie Gremminger and Meredith Patrick, co-founders of Leona.
Hello. Thank you so much, Lauren. We're so excited to chat with you.
Thank you for being here. So today we are going to talk about parental leave and the solution that you're building together. But first, I want to know about each of your personal experiences that shaped your passion for improving leave, because I get it. I'm particularly passionate about it as someone with a child and another on the way, and I know how difficult it can be. But I want to hear how this came to fruition for each of you.
Yeah, well, thanks for sharing a little bit about your tie in there too. I'll go first because I think my experience began in a similar way. I encountered the parental leave system for the first time as I was planning to have my own child. And I became pregnant a month into owning my own small business and my own LLC. So I had a lot of questions about what that looked like for me, which might not be as common as other traditional workplaces. But, it really came down to showing me two things. The first thing was that, man, I happened to live in a state where the policies were really there for me. I live in New York, and I was able to find a way to have the coverage that I needed with like an opt-in paid family leave insurance that I could purchase. And there was a lot of just like lovely policy related things there for me as a small business owner. And the second thing that I kind of connected to in my leave was the fact that I was working with clients who were just values-based, heart-forward people. And even though I was a freelance contractor in their team environment, they really championed like the fact that I was about to go on leave, and they like held space for that. They found someone to cover my role, and they reserved it for me to come back to. And when you think about people over profit, like they definitely spent money doing that to care for me. And it's a team I still have the pleasure of working with today. And so all of that to say, I think parental leave, in my eyes, I was very easily shown a beautiful, gratitude-filled experience, both from policies and from people. And it kind of left me with this very clear awareness that I am not normal in that, and that so many people, primarily women, every single day have to like navigate the most complex systems. And a lot of those systems aren't working. And it kind of just gave me that ping of like, how can I bring more people to experience the kind of leave that I was able to have? And that little whisper kind of was planted there at that time. And so that's kind of where I come from it. And I know Meredith has a different angle. So I love hearing the differences in our how we found this topic.
Yeah, same. Because honestly, one of my favorite parts about Leona is that Maggie came at it, like she said, from the personal experience of being a new parent, while I came at it from being child free by choice. I joke that I don't have any kids, I don't have a TV, and as of this recording, I don't have a partner. So I have a lot of time and energy that parents don't have. So like Maggie said, she had her marketing LLC. I have a project management LLC, and a client had hired me to help her when she went on maternity leave. And I really understood the power and impact of being able to help a mom not only spend time with her family, but also help an entrepreneur keep her business running while she was away. And she ended up having the baby 2 weeks early. So my onboarding wasn't fully complete by the time I started. And with my operations and admin support background, I kept thinking, how can I streamline this in the future? How can I make this better? How can I scale this to help more people? And so I just started researching this idea. And several months later, I was introduced to Maggie, and Leona was born. I love that both of you have come at this from what I would say is a really unique angle or experience, because from what I understand, a lot of people, as they decide to uh, build a company, start a startup, go into entrepreneurship,
are doing so because they want to fix a problem. And so a lot of times I think it's because they've experienced that problem and are mad about it and they want to make a change. But Maggie, you had a really good experience and realized that everyone else should too. And Meredith, as you were saying, like you don't have kids. And um neither does, for example, our founder CEO Amy. She is child free by choice, but she has also for us put in place really comprehensive parental leave because she understands the impact that that has on people as employees, as family members, as people of society, so they can come back and feel productive and like they have the mental capacity and space to do what they want to do. So I'm so glad that we're talking about this because it doesn't necessarily take the firsthand experience to know that you can build something important and have sympathy and empathy for people who are going through this. I want to know how you found each other though, because you both had kind of different experiences, but were on this same path, like toward one another as it relates to parental leave. And Maggie, I know you told me that you two had connected on LinkedIn as the three of us have, and it kind of just blossomed from there. But tell me more.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. It's one of those like sometimes you just see a little door opening somewhere and you're like, I'm gonna look at that door and open it. And I feel like there was a lot of like lovely energy around the story of Meredith and I connecting. We have a great mutual friend and LinkedIn connection, Nora Denuzo, and she actually brought us together and said, hey, I think you two would have a nice casual coffee chat. So as many of us do in the LinkedIn community, sometimes you just set up casual coffee chats. And Meredith and I were able to do that in August. And we truly had a very normal, lovely, but unremarkable in terms of like what we were discussing conversation until the very end, when I think I threw in a line, and Meredith, you can correct me if your memory is different, but I'm pretty sure at the end of the call, I said, I'm actually thinking about providing marketing services for the specific audience of women preparing for maternity leave, because I feel like I just went through that and there wasn't anyone around me saying, I can help you with that specific thing. Um, and then Meredith's face on the Zoom call just kind of like froze in place. And I'm pretty sure she followed up with like, I've been thinking about this idea for months. So it was just like a spark of like the right moment, right time. And we just kind of started like business dating from there and exploring our ideas. And Meredith, is my memory correct?
It is, yes. And we were immediately like, we need to schedule another call. And as Maggie said, we just had a couple business dates before deciding we were going to officially go into business together. But we both like to think of it as a big magic moment. If you've read the book by Elizabeth Gilbert, just two separate people having the same idea, meeting at the right time, at the right moment, and just being able to connect and build something amazing. So I just want to give a shout out to Elizabeth Gilbert because that was definitely an example of big magic.
It's so cool. I love that because I have also met with a lot of people from LinkedIn lately just for coffee chats. And you get a glimpse of what people are passionate about from whatever they're writing about, if they're posting or if they just are DMing you about things they're interested in. But there's something special about sitting here face to face, even if we're not in the same state or in an actual coffee shop, and just having that moment of serendipity of like, oh my God, we're thinking the same thing. Like this means something. We should build this. So I love that that has happened for the two of you. On the other hand, I want to talk about gaps because there is clearly a need for what you are working on. But I want to ask you in particular, what are you seeing that companies are not addressing when it comes to leave management, all of the things that go into making sure someone can take time off and truly unplug?
Yeah, that's a great question, Lauren, because that's obviously the biggest problem that we're seeing in terms of parental leave, right? Is that we're finding that most companies are just plugging the holes when it comes to parental leave. They might hire a consultant to help them create a leave plan, or even worse, they make the parent write their own parental leave plan, even if they're a new parent and they've never gone through this experience before. They often have the parents' team members do their work for them rather than outsourcing it to a fractional hire like Leona. And so, like I said, they're just plugging the holes in a broken system
Hmm.
rather than fixing the broken system itself. They're approaching it from a reactive perspective rather than proactive. And Maggie has some really great insights onto how this affects their team.
Yeah. And, the thing, Lauren, is that the data, like if we want to just look at what the numbers are telling us about how organizations are doing, we can see that they're struggling to really support their team in a meaningful way. And, you look at return to work metrics, and we can see that there's like a quarter of new parents that come back on their return date, and it's a surprise to their colleagues. Talk about like a lack of opportunity to show support and like bridge workflow communication. We look at retention, and we know that there's approximately a third of new parents that will leave their job in the first 18 months after returning to work. And beyond the parent, you can just look at the data around the team environment. And we know that over half of parental leaves result in some level of team burnout. Um, and I think it's not uncommon that sometimes as a parent goes on leave, their roles just get distributed to everyone in their department. Is that working? The numbers say no. And so I think it's safe to say that parental leave systems as they are just not sufficient. And employees have I think a very strong desire to see change and to see better environment on this and a better approach.
I'm glad you brought up that 1/3 statistic because I am part of it. In my original, I guess in my first pregnancy, I was working at this company and it was like during COVID. So it was we're fully remote and now we're kind of back and now we're out again and now we're kind of back. Uh, and that was hectic in itself. And I remember just being at the end of my rope at the end of the pregnancy, as one usually is. And I remember coming home that Friday and saying to my husband, if this child is not born this weekend, I am quitting my job. I am not going back on Monday. She was born on Sunday. Thank God. And uh, in the 3 months that I was on leave and was recovering, and I know I've commented this on one of your posts before, like something switched in my brain where I realized that what I was doing in my job wasn't serving me. I knew that there would be so much for me to pick up when I came back because I was the only person doing what I was doing and I couldn't hand it off to anyone else. And I had no support in that way. And then I just didn't come back. I was like, you know what? Actually, the better thing for me to do right now would be to change my career trajectory. And I can't imagine how many people go through that same experience. So I'm really glad that you are addressing this because had I had support from a company like Leona, I think maybe I would have felt like I wasn't up the creek without a paddle. I think so many
Yeah.
are.
And to your point, Lauren, just to chime in, like your story is such a great example of like why organizations should look at new ideas, like what we're trying to present with Leona and say, this is a chance to like invest in our entire company, like it's like a long-term, long scale, like everyone benefits when a company is filled with employees who are staying there, right? The
Yes.
cost of an applicant is insane. So to me, this is where the story and the experience of what you were feeling as a new parent and looking at the lack of planning and the fears of returning, if that were addressed appropriately, the company could have financially seen that show up in the value of making choices that are good for you and good for them. And I just couldn't let you share that comment without being like, this is a great example. So thank you for your story and interacting there. It makes perfect sense.
Of course. I mean, we know that there is a huge cost when it comes to talent retention, and this is a piece of it. So I want to, because I know you have data, I want to talk a little bit more about talent retention, the cost of that, and you can talk about managing teams through this, your personal experience, what you've seen, or what you're planning for, because I imagine this is something that you're going to have to walk companies through and explain. Like, listen, you are basically lighting money on fire because you're not supporting people through this.
Yeah, definitely. A strong leave support system is crucial for retention, not just for the parent, but for their teammates as well. With Leona, we emphasize having an empathetic approach throughout the parental leave process because without empathy, especially in phase 3, when the parent comes back, to your point, Lauren, if they feel like they have months of work to catch up on, or as Maggie quoted, if most of their team doesn't even know they're coming back, the parent is likely to leave the company within a year or two. Maggie gave that data point. Then, as for their teammates, as we've discussed, companies often just give them the parents' workload when they already have a full time workload. So, this increases that workload by 30 or 40%. Then they understandably get burnt out. They might start feeling resentful and unappreciated, and then they often end up quitting as well. So, right off the bat, you have at least one or two people that are leaving within a year or two after one parental leave. And so, our goal with working with Leona is that you're getting a minimum of 2, maybe 3 times ROI by ensuring that the whole team is feeling supported and valued and they want to stay with the company.
That's so interesting. I'm glad that you brought that up because I think I've thought about the impact on the greater team, but not in so many words. You know, I've thought about how i- if I'm going out on leave this coming round, I guess, um, what I'll have to leave behind for my team so that they feel supported and so that they're not trying to pick up all of these pieces and then uh, burn out because of it. Um, but there is that conversation that happens, I think, a lot in the workplace where people think that leave is a little bit of a vacation. So they are getting more work added to their plates. They're frustrated because of it. They're trying to keep on top of everything. And then that person comes back and then they can just like pick up where they left off. And I can see like how that resentment would build. And then now you're not just losing one person, you're losing 2 or 3 or whatever that looks like. And it's detrimental to a team. It's detrimental to a company.
Yeah, and the culture around that team is, oh no, there's a 25-year-old woman new on the team. I bet she's gonna have a kid. Like that
Mm-hmm.
literally happened to me. I've been that girl on a team where I literally learned that they were afraid I was gonna like get pregnant because I just got married. And like
Yep.
that's gross, right? Like, don't we want to be in a place that's like, wow, you want to become a parent and transform your identity and raise a human and change the world for the better? Like, that's a beautiful thing, and, like, I literally just like, motherhood is magic for anyone who knows, and I'm just sad that, like, in the workplace, that element is not seen by everyone in a shared space, so I just think it's an opportunity for someone to come in, change not just, like, the working environment and the flow of how the role is covered, but also shift the culture and, like, appreciate the magic, which is being a parent because we deserve to relish in the magic, which is being a parent.
Yeah, because culturally, I would want that for anybody in any leave. If you have to take off time to support an aging parent, or you have to take off time because maybe a spouse broke a leg and you have to help them rehabilitate, or whatever that maybe you need leave personally for your mental health, because that's just as important in this day and age. We know that everybody is on like a fast moving train to burnout. So, whatever leave looks like, if we're supporting those people, then they will have the tools that they need to come back and be productive and continue to add culture value to the team. Makes a lot of sense. But I want to talk more about what you're specifically building because I think this is really interesting. And I want to understand more about how you plan to help companies um, either reimagine what they're doing currently, fix what they're doing, improve what they're doing. Tell me more.
Yeah. Well, we're excited to kind of, we came at the problem and we thought if we could make a solution, forget the current way people are doing it, what do we think would be the right way to fix this? What would we pull out of our hat that thinks about everyone involved? And Leona kind of centers around a 3-phase approach. So we talk about a phase 1, a phase 2, and a phase 3. And those kind of map out to phase 1 being the preparing for a leave for the expecting parent. Phase 2 is the time where that parent is on leave. And Leona is there as like a coverage overview. And then phase 3 is when the parent returns and is reintegrating and transitioning back into the workload. And so Leona's approach when we work with a company is we say every single phase, we are going to own really planning comprehensive and intentional coverage and care for your team and for the new parent. So we're going to look at what plans need to be made in terms of how frequently does someone need to meet with whom, what's the preferred method of communication while the parent's on leave, what kind of standing meetings and team environment, culture, all of it. We're kind of absorbing all the information we can in phase 1 with the background knowledge that the new parent could have the baby anytime because babies don't keep to the calendar.
Yep.
So we're very prepared for adaptability throughout, but especially in phase 1. And then phase 2, this is kind of a differentiator for us that we're really proud of. There are others who are trying to do the planning similar to what we want to provide in phase 1, but Leona stays with the team and with the new parent in phase 2. And we actually insert ourselves into the team as a fractional member and we cover the work. And we really keep things flowing. And we are a central piece of what will be helpful in phase 3 when the parent comes back. And we can be a leader in terms of how to hand things back off, how to gauge how the new parent's doing. There's a lot of sensitivity and individuality that comes into this. Every parent will have a different experience. Every team environment is a little different. So where we come in and we look at these 3 phases, the high level overview is that we want to ask the question, what does the parent need in this phase? And we want to ask the question, what does the team need in this phase? And we just want to kind of take that and own it so that HR teams and managers and supervisors don't have to try to figure it out. We want to just be a trusted part of the environment and be there to make it the best experience possible.
That. How have you accomplished this or worked on this previously? Like I'm wondering where you've gathered like your best practices from, whether it's personal experience or you've led teams through this already. Because I'm just interested in what the legwork looks like and what the success looks like. I think companies are particularly interested in all right, this is interesting. How can I ensure that this is gonna go well?
Yeah, Meredith, do you want to grab this one?
Well, so I know, Maggie, that you have personal experience with helping a mom on maternity leave. So I would love for you to dive into that, but I'll just talk to the point of, especially in today's environment where a lot of teams are remote, right? Like Leona works with remote friendly companies across the United States. We just really emphasize the importance of clear communication and flexibility. So whether that's working with a parental leave company, as we have with Leona, or from our individual experiences with our own separate businesses, just making sure that everyone is on the same page in terms of what the timeline is, who's working on what. We've talked about the importance of phase 3, both for making sure the team knows that the parent is coming back, but to your point, Lauren, that the parent doesn't have 2 months or 3 months worth of work that they're then going to get dumped with when they return. So especially for phase 3, we really strongly encourage that slow and steady reintegration rather than have them immediately come back full time. Maybe they want to come back part time. We often encourage teams to have them come back on a Wednesday so that it's not an overwhelming full week of having to come back to work. So really, to Maggie's point, just customizing it based on the parents' preferences, on what works best with the team, what important projects are coming up. That customization aspect is really important. But Maggie, like I said, I'd love for you to share your personal experience.
Yeah, well, thanks, Meredith. I wanted your take on it first because mine feels obvious between us. But yeah, I actually just recently finished up a maternity leave specific coverage in 2024 that kind of gave me a more validation to the point of this is needed. This requires a different set of skills than just hiring out a temp to come in and do the work. The skills required for like covering a leave, especially one in which, health and, contingency planning is also a thing to be realistic about and consider. Like everything that we are doing in the background as we build this business is from a place of being like, pretend there's nothing set and we can build it however we want. And it helps us remain creative and open to really, what Meredith mentioned, customize the way we approach, but also build a framework that walks us through every client we will work with as a starting point. So we have a lot of like background planning work that's ready to go and underway to work with clients. But once we're in the environment of being with a team, that's when we will really just make everything fit the right way, because we don't want to spend any energy looking at something that's not as important as what the team needs in that moment or in that quarter. And I think a lot of that is just being willing to be curious and communicate really efficiently to make sure everyone's on the same page. So you can't just hire that out as easily as, some other things. It's a very complex set of skills, I believe.
Yeah, and just to add one more thing to that, because I know that we talk about flexibility a lot, but what plan we come up with in phase one isn't set in stone, right? Based on how the parent goes through the experience in phase two, when we're discussing their reintegration in phase three, it might be different than what we had originally discussed in phase one. So depending on how they're feeling, it's just that adaptability and flexibility across the team to make sure like, okay, where are we feeling right now in each phase, and how can we adapt and move forward to make sure this process is as smooth and seamless as possible.
It's so interesting. I think that, well, I guess my assumption would be that a lot of companies are really quick to, as you mentioned, like hire a temp agency, outsource in some kind of way, but that then steers them into the direction of the one size fits all. And we know that that's not the case. We talk about it with benefits all the time. So why should leave be any different? So this is a truly personalized touch that you're offering, which I'm wondering if companies realize like that is what is needed. Like you can't just outsource something to someone who knows nothing about your team, nothing about your company, and expect for the same kind of results where you two are really entrenching yourselves in their culture and in the project management, in the experience and conversations so that the best outcome happens for everyone involved. It's a really interesting way to do it. So, my question, because I think this will come up a lot, and maybe it's something that you're going to have to make the case for in conversations and building a website and talking about what you're doing on LinkedIn. Um, when we look at, I guess, our shared buyer, for example, when we look at our audience as being human resources largely, or people leaders, or operations management, whatever that looks like in whatever company, I think they tend to be more comfortable with or lean toward companies that are built by people like them, people who are maybe in traditional HR and understand policies and benefits and whatever that looks like. But you're taking this approach as entrepreneurs rather than a traditional background or experience. So I don't know if the question is necessarily why, but how? How are you going to answer those objections? Do you think it'll be well received? Like, make the case for me because I believe in it, but I'm also, in marketing and HR tech. I'm not the HR person.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. I know Meredith and I both have like a lot of conversations that revolve around this. And off the bat, I just have to say that like the initial way that I want to answer this is like this idea and this desire to create Leona was an organic thing that found us because we were looking at a problem. So maybe we are not in traditional HR, but I would hope that the people we might be working with are leaders at businesses who say creativity is welcome, innovation is welcome, new ideas are welcome. And let's be real, I'm not trying to cover someone's HR role because I don't do HR. So like the idea came organically to both of us. And I also, think, I have a background in marketing. Meredith has a background in operations. we have our respective like industry expertise skill sets, but we both also recognize some of those shared skills that are essential for a plan like this to work, which I alluded to earlier. What we bring to providing Leona services as a part of parental leave coverage is like we understand the level of trust that needs to be built when you're integrating with a team and leading them through something like this. We can adapt easily and shapeshift and be ready for change. We are not afraid to cater the way we communicate, knowing that communication is a key to anything happening and happening well. That's like a very nuanced thing that requires a lot of, I think, emotional intelligence to navigate and really capture. And I think more importantly than perhaps all of those skills, Meredith and I are incredibly curious, question forward people. We want to learn. We're not afraid of not knowing every answer. And I think if you're looking at hiring someone to come in and support a team through a moment in time of your organization, all of those skills are what you're looking for. You're not looking for the resume of what department they worked in their whole life. You're just looking for a solution from people who have strong ideas and have the right skills that can see those ideas forward. And so that's like my quick 2 cents. Meredith, I'd love to hear anything I'm sure you have to contribute on that HR conversation in general.
Yeah, a couple things just to add to Maggie's point that we really want to work with forward-thinking, curious, progressive companies. I always think of a sign my dad has outside his office that says, because it's always been done that way, and it has a line through it. Like we're not about how it's always been done. We're about how it could be and how it could be improved on. And so whether HR would receive it well, we've talked to dozens of people in HR, and they've all thankfully been very enthusiastic about Leona. I remember one VP said that 33% of her entire company had a baby in 1 year. So
Wow.
she really would have appreciated Leona at that point in time if it had existed. We're also building really strategic partnerships to help fill gaps that we might not be able to solve. To Maggie's point, we can't do everything. So one of our partnerships is with Cocoon, and they help HR with the regulatory compliance aspect of leave management. So we feel strongly not just about supporting the team and the parent, but also the HR team and the whole company as well. Maggie and I didn't create Leona to reinvent the wheel when it comes to parental leave policies. There's a good starting off place, but rather we use parental leave as the tool to help companies improve the lives of the employees across the entire organization.
I love Cocoon, so I'm really glad that you're partnering with them. I met them actually at Transform a couple of years ago, a little bit when they were kind of first starting out, and they've since blown by everybody because what they're doing is so important. And they introduced us to a very interesting concept, which we immediately adopted, where originally we were looking at this from parental leave and extended leave and short-term leave and like whatever kinds of buckets that people needed. And then they said, well, why not just offer compassionate leave? Why not just put it all in one? And then you're giving people the autonomy and the respect and the privacy to decide what they need to use that leave for and what that looks like. So if someone needs to take a week because they are just having a hard time with whatever in their personal life, then they can use compassionate leave. If they're getting ready to go out on parental leave, then they can use a portion of it for that. Of course, there's actual policies in place, but the concept was so interesting that we immediately glommed onto it and introduced it at Compt. So I'm really glad that you're working with them because I think what they're doing in this space is going to propel all of us forward as we think about leave differently, as we try to offer more one-on-one support for everyone. That personalized experience is something that so many of us are talking about and trying to solve. And we know that employees are begging for this. There is just, I don't know. Are you seeing this too, like slow adoption or something? Or because as you mentioned, the HR people that you've talked to were like, well, where was this? And I've had those same conversations. I want to hear more about that. Like, what are people talking to you about? What conversations are you having? Just fill me in.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Meredith?
so we've been talking not only with HR, we've been talking with lots of parents just to get the diverse stories because obviously no two leave experiences are the same, even for the same parent, right? Their experience with their first child might look entirely different from the second. So, to Maggie's earlier point, that we're building a framework to just have a foundational starting place for what that leave experience can look like and then being able to customize it based on all the research we've gotten from parents, based on all the research we've gotten from HR and what could most successfully help their team. And so that's why we've really been strongly and steadily working behind the scenes before our launch in March, just to make sure that everything is as supportive and empathetic as possible to be customized to support everyone. But Maggie would love to hear your thoughts on this as well.
Yeah, Lauren, I think it's like such an exciting thing to me because again, like I'm new to this, like part of me feels very like I'm learning so much about HR, right? Like I'm obviously learning a lot in the
Same.
nature of this business. But I feel like some of the excitement around this, and we spoke about Cocoon, is that it's very lovely to look at the world and say, I can't fix it all, but I'm going to pour my whole heart into this part of the broken thing. And if this were a tree and employee benefits and policies are an entire tree, like we get to like own a branch of this and like do it in a way that we can just be open to looking at it fresh eyes. And I think that that is just the people that we share our ideas with. I think to the point you made about Cocoon and the way they say compassionate leave, like that was a new kind of concept, but like it resonated. And I think that there's ways that we can keep integrating heart forward thinking about practical business setting solutions. And so for me, that's the overwhelming response has been that like, yes, when you're thinking about it with your head and your heart and you're talking about it through the lens of both unapologetically, that's when change actually feels meaningful and hope can be like actually captured. So I don't know that that exactly answered your question, but it's certainly like a part of the response that is exciting and energizing to Meredith and I because yeah, when the world is a hard place, it's like this is the corner where we feel we can change and we don't want to do it alone. We want to do it with people and leaders and thought leaders, especially like with you guys and everything Comp does is a great example. It's just really energizing to be a part of the branch and to like connect with other people to really be a sturdy place for the future.
I'm immediately stealing that. I am going to shout it from the rooftops.
Feel away.
Immediately tell our head of content, like, we need to start looking at this as a tree and branches
Yeah.
because the second you said that, like, it all just came together for me because we think about this entire space of like HR tech and all of its tangential things, types of software as benefits and payroll and leave management. And effectively, it's all of the things that make for a better, more human employee experience, which at the end of the day, we're all working toward, we're all growing toward because we're a tree. Ah, I just love
Yeah.
this.
And to your point, Lauren, like I'm thinking of how you must feel like if I were an HR leader and I had that entire tree and I had to make sure I was trying to help each one. Leona's like literally like, we can just like hold this branch. We
Hmm.
don't want to write your policy book. We can't own all the compliance things, but like we got the emotional part and the practical job coverage part. Like this is the branch you can like let go of for a minute. So it's lovely to hear you kind of respond and like feel that example because it's a silly metaphor, but I definitely find myself appreciating the way it lets me look at the situation.
Yeah, and
The
to extend the metaphor a little bit more, like we have other branches that can help you too, right? So, like to Maggie's point, HR doesn't need to cover the whole tree. Leona has the parental leave branch, Cocoon has the leave management branch. So, we're really excited about this community that we're building of support systems to support parents and their teammates in the workplace in all aspects, not just covering parental leave.
Well, it's arguably one of the heavier branches because it is so emotionally charged and involved. I mean, you're dealing with people going through very personal life experiences, huge experiences. And it's not as I don't want to take away the nuanced nature of all of the things that HR has to juggle, but it's not as simple as selecting payroll software. Like, you know exactly what it needs to do. It needs to pay people, it needs to work for you, it needs to make sure that everything is tax compliant and that people are being paid on time. Uh, but the leave management, the parental leave is where things get like stickier and trickier. And because HR is tasked with so many different things, you they don't have as much time and energy to devote to exactly this issue, which is what needs to happen. Like, people need the time and energy devoted to this because it is so significant. So having the two of you and having a solution like Leona is massively important.
And because you choose to work with us, Lauren, just a icing on the cake, you do as an HR leader have your own KPIs and your own metrics that you're watching in terms of employee
Mhm.
retention, team satisfaction, overall sentiment, burnout, like all of the things that this branch covered by Leona does. Like, the output of what we do benefits the entire tree. And it's that's why we think this is of value at most, like, this isn't just about like covering the one work when the one person's gone. It's about like everyone in your entire company understanding when someone goes on leave, nothing gets missed and everyone feels supported. And beyond all of that, people feel seen. So new
Mm.
parents feel seen, and everyone can feel like that's one less place of tension, stress, or ambiguity, So you as an HR leader can like sleep at night a little easier knowing this isn't going to take you further from your goals. You're going to be brought closer to the things that will make your team stronger. And you can bring that to the stakeholders and say, look at this. We're building something that's making meaningful change.
Yeah. So we've touched on this throughout, but I want to specifically talk about what success would look like for both of you in transforming how companies handle parental leave. And we could talk about this from like short term, like what you're working on currently. We can talk about this for the rest of 2025 or as we build over time, because we know that workplaces are changing rapidly, but we see some of the same things, the same themes every year. People want flexibility, they want support. We've seen a sharp rise in caregiving. I mean, we saw like a 300% increase in spending toward caregiving. We know that people are interested in professional development at both ends of the workforce, where you have people coming out of college who want to upskill, and then you have boomers who are not retiring and need to figure out like what does the rest of my career look like? So I realize this is a very involved, heavy question. And for some reason, I always ask the most difficult questions at the end. But let's talk about this from a short term, what's going on? What do we hope for? And then we'll circle back to the long term, the vision, the goal.
Yeah. Well, I'll take this first. And, I think the short term is Meredith and I are very humble about what we're trying to do. This is something new, and we are building very much so in public. We are talking about the things that we're trying to navigate. We are unafraid of failing in something and iterating and trying in a different way. Collaboration is a key part of like what we do with everyone we connect with, whether it's a partner, a client, anyone. So in the short term, I think, success to us, if I were to give it an identity, is just making progress towards this larger change. And I feel like that isn't as specific as like something of we want to have this many clients by this date. But to me, it resonates and is completely satisfactory to me because we'll be able to see that progress. And that's what will fuel the larger impact. Which brings that second kind of question into my mind of I think in your original question, you asked about transforming, like
Yeah.
what about transforming how companies handle this? And transformation is like a guiding light and word of like how I feel like we can look at success, because success to me at a broad scale is the moment when we can see how Leona has helped an organization team members, parents, everyone in it, to really recognize the true transformative nature of their team member who is now a parent, or a parent for the second time or the third time. And success is when people within that environment can really appreciate the fact that they have an expanded family and empathize with them when they are requiring support, because it's hard to be a parent. And more so protecting those parents in new ways in the workplace. So to me, it's a broad kind of culture goal of like, success looks this way because some of that resentment or the lack of understanding has diminished. We've opened doors and given visibility to the experiences in a new way. And people enjoy the space in that workplace because of that shift in culture. So it's a little bit of a broad stroke to answer it, but I'd love to hear Meredith's thoughts on just like that level of both small and large success, but those are what resonate for me.
Yeah, for me, short term, I think is just having those conversations, right? To Maggie's point, just talking to people. As we've said, this isn't how it's always been done. So it's a new way of thinking, and they need to marinate on it and think how it could be applicable to their team and their company. So just getting that foot in the door of changing the culture one company at a time is our short-term goal. But then long-term, changing that culture for numerous companies, right? And not just how they see parents as they go through that journey, but again, coming from the child-free by choice perspective, not devaluing the work that their team members are contributing as well, right? Because as we've previously discussed, we don't want them to get that extra 30 or 40% workload. And
Yeah.
in my personal experience, having worked in situations like that, where I had an increased workload in an already stressful situation, I understand exactly what that feels like. And so, long term success to me, to Maggie's point, is not just understanding the parental transformation, but also really encouraging the transformation of the team going on this journey with the parent, right? The parental leave experience is not just the parent, the entire team is going through this experience together. And so Leona's goal and mission is to ensure that every single person on that team thrives, that the organization thrives, and that they all come out stronger on the other side.
I feel like you two are the perfect balance because you see it from either side of the
So
situation.
true.
Yeah, it makes so much sense because you know, I lived a life before I had a child, and I also experienced the getting workload dumped on me and thinking, "Why me? Of all people, how do I share this load across the team, or how do I manage what is the core of my job and now also someone else's job, and how is that fair?" And it creates not the best culture. And because I had that experience, I have more empathy on the other side of things. I don't want to do that to my team. I don't want them to have to pick up what is I feel is my responsibility. So I think the conversations that you're already having and will be having will be heard by people. Like, I think people will actually listen to this, or at least I'm hoping so, because I think it's a great idea.
Well, thank you. And I think it's really lovely to have the authenticity of our individual stories be such cornerstones and like how we're presenting solutions to a problem. And we have a lot of visions for an exciting future, and it's starting with the two of us. But like our big goals are to really scale and meet various industries and have a fractional team that works within the Leona atmosphere, and like to really bring this to a level where we can like match, make meaningful change on a larger scale. So it's great that like our core stories, I feel grateful at least that they're so real that like I don't have to try to sell why Meredith is the best and why I love working with her on this. It's just, partnership is so powerful when you have like the right person in your circle. And that's a whole nother podcast episode. But um, yeah, Meredith is great. And we're both feeling so grateful that like this is what we get to do together. So thank you for giving us a space, Lauren, to talk about it and celebrate it and, just explore what's going to be the future. It's exciting.
I love that. Before we go, I want to ask one more thing because I think I, I've said this a million times. I think what you're doing is so unique and amazing. But you had mentioned building in public, and as I am chronically online, I see more and more of what you're posting on LinkedIn, and I mean, everything that you talk about resonates with me, so I can't help myself but comment. But why did you decide to do it this way? And what kind of response are you getting? Because I think it's interesting. I think a lot of companies are afraid to build in public. They don't want people stealing their ideas or something like that. But it's this conversation that we know needs to be had, and you're contributing to it.
Yeah, great
Meredith?
question. I think it all started, at least for me. Maggie and I had a personal offsite a few months ago where we really like scoped out what we want both the short term and the long term vision of Leona to look like. And we decided at that offsite that we wanted to build in public because we felt that was the transparent thing to do. We wanted to show people what we were learning, what was working for us, what wasn't, being vulnerable with our community and sharing our personal stories, our backgrounds, our worries, our fears. Because as I've said, community is so important to us, whether it's our partners that we're officially partnering with or just our advocates that are sharing they love what we're building and they want to support us in any way. So to us, building in public was just that natural next step in our evolution of showing how excited we are by what we're creating, but also the ebbs and flows of it, right? This is the second company that we're both building. So we know that entrepreneurship is a roller coaster and social media is often only the highlight reel. And we don't want that for Leona, right? We want
Right.
to show the ebbs and flows of everything. So that's my thoughts on it. But Maggie, love to hear yours.
Yeah, I mean, Lauren, we can't go to a pitch and be like, we know everything about everything. I mean, we're confident, but we're real people first, right?
Yeah.
Authenticity is like we don't steer away from that. And if we do, we catch each other. We've had moments where we get caught in our ego and we're like, oh, so and so is trying to do so and so, and that's kind of what we want to do. And we have to kind of recalibrate because again, there's a lot of people out there trying to make the broken systems better. And we want to be in the spirit of like, yes, let's all do that. Here's how Leona is doing it. And we're just going to show everyone. And like, it's okay. Like, that's okay. There's room for a lot of people who want to make positive change. And if we let the ego or the fear of like ideas stealing and this and that, seep in, then we're not going to be pulled towards the change. We're going to be pulled into ego. And so, I mean, of course, we have IP protections. We've got a lawyer. We've got things that we're trying to, be practical and smart about the way we create this business. But we're also we don't want to choose that fear element. We want to be true. We want to be open. And that's how we will work with people when we launch Leona. So
I love that. I think it's a great way to showcase your authenticity and humanness all the way around. Like it'll bring people into your atmosphere and they'll have that same experience throughout. And I think, like we said, that's what people are looking for, the personal human side of all of this. So thank you both so much for getting personal with me today. I've never done that before. That felt really gross. That felt like a really weird plug. I
it's
did
your
not want to do
tagline.
that. I know. Oh my gosh. No, I truly appreciate it because I think the stories that we're sharing here are so important and will help us build a better world of work for everyone. Maybe not us. Maybe it's going to take a long time, but maybe for the next generation.
Yeah. They'll be proud of us someday. Our kids and our auntie, I guess all of Meredith's like nephews and nieces and friends' kids will go, thank you. We'll all do it together. That's the way we have to do it.
Thanks for joining us on Getting Personal, brought to you by lifestyle benefits experts at Compt.